Welcome to the Alchemy of Ascension Season 3, harmonizing light and shadow to embody your mystical power and purpose. I'm your host, Washela Sananda, and today I have such a treat for all of you. It is the amazing Paul Luftenegger. Welcome, Paul.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me, and hello to everyone.
Yeah, I'm so delighted to have you and so thrilled that you agreed to do this interview. Just so the people that aren't familiar with your work have an idea of what you've done, I'm going to share just a little bit from your bio. There's so much more, but this is for starters anyway. Paul Luftenegger is acclaimed worldwide for writing, singing, and composing conscious, kind, loving music to inspire and promote global love and kindness from within. And he is a certified Heal Your Life teacher. Paul is an ascension guide working with the Diamond Light Council of angels, archangels, ascended masters, and saints of divine love. Paul is an alchemist of divine, omnipresent love, working with sound and vibrational consciousness, focusing on the light body, chakras, using loving, conscious music. So that's just a start. And, even just reading what you've written, I really feel drawn in to your work. And I can honestly say every time I listen to your music, I start crying. It's
Mm.
just an emotional, not sadness, but an emotional reaction that I have. I don't even know why. In fact, I was listening earlier this morning before I was writing and I started crying. I'm like, I can't even, I can't play this well because I won't get anything done. But it is such an amazing interaction of emotion and frequency, and I can feel the healing in it. It's very expansive, and it's a very unusual reaction for me. I mean, I just don't have that regularly to regular music that I would hear, so this is very special. And I'd love for you to just begin by sharing a little bit about your origin story. How did you become the creator of this type of music, and sort of what opened you up into your spiritual path?
Mm. Well, first of all, thank you for just sharing I think ultimately your emotional intelligence with my work and with my creation and co-creation together with you, because that's really what we're doing. So I think really where I must begin is I've always been, I think, ultimately drawn to the psychic or to the I would say the expansion of consciousness, if you will, from a very young age. I was always drawn to that sort of, I think, ultimately answering the question of why are we here? And I think this is really common for people that will, be a part of this. So I think, I came out of the womb with billions of questions and I needed to figure out why I was here. So I know that, ultimately that's the big part of this, with consciousness from a young age. And then moving into, actually when I was 33 into 34 years old, I was sort of lost, for lack of a better term, in what I felt was my purpose or my mission. And every year I just got further and further away from, I think, ultimately who I really am. And I say that with humility because I think being gay was a huge part of that detachment and that separation from source. I think all of the challenges being human had separated me. And on March the 6th of 2011, my life changed on a dime. And what happened is I was visited by what I would call God, or what I would call source, or what I would call pure omnipresent divine love. And it was the day of my father's suicide, and he was 56 years old. It is for sure the hardest day of my life. And it is where the world stopped and where I began again. And I would say a rebirth happened. And it was not easy to go through that space. It is the shadow of my life for sure. It's where I had to face all of my life ultimately. And I think the things that I was happy with and the things I wasn't happy with about being here. And God showed up for me and guided me every single day. And I had stopped writing music, or stopped really anything musical, for probably about 12 or 13 years. I'd given up on that dream. And it's so interesting because I was very frustrated by that. And then what happened is God showed me back to how to do this properly. And it's like I can kind of understand both sides of a coin now from where I come from. And I would say I come from source, or from God, which is, I think you need to know where you come from to know where you're going, and how to be is how I would explain that. And everything started to make sense of why I was shown all of the things in my life that had happened. And through a life review process, which is what I did, I opened up ultimately to, I think, just my highest self. And really, just I wanted to read the title of this real program is actually Harmonizing Light and Shadow to Embody Your Mystical Power and Purpose. This is so perfect because we're living in a time where we have to become our highest self to thrive here. It's not complicated. And we're all here for a reason to figure that out individually first, and then co-creating, really, quite frankly, a new world. And I know this is very true because I've been living this for 10 years, and there are two worlds going on. And I say this with humility, but we're living in some pretty challenging times right now. And in order for us to really hold hands with each other, we have to face all that we are. No mistake in any of this. We're here for a reason, and we have to figure out that reason from our heart and our soul with our highest self in manifest. And that's really why I'm really grateful to be here, especially in 2021 with all of you, and especially with you, Washela, just for asking me. And I know this is divinely aligned. So I just wanted to start by saying that. And with music, to answer your question, music just started flooding and downloading into me with source. And it just, I couldn't keep up with it. And I didn't know how to do it at the beginning. I was really confused, but I just let one day happen at a time. And somehow I managed to write 7 albums, which are an Ascension guide collection. So they go together from start to finish. And it's really a codex and a lexicon of emotional intelligence to help us essentially tap into our highest self with our teams on the other side and here, with source and with the Diamond Light Council that will help you. So that's me.
Wow, that's a lot. And, Paul, you really are the most perfect example of harmonizing light and shadow, because it's like the biggest shadow event of your life, your father's suicide. While that was, I can only imagine, horrifying, you somehow took that and created such beauty in the body of work that manifested from, launching out of that experience, from what you've shared. Um, it's interesting to me. I'd love to know a little bit more about the experience you described of your rebirth, or you know, your opening into, and how was that tied to your father's passing? Was it him that opened that door for you, or, could you just unpack that experience a
Sure.
little bit?
And it's a really important part, I think, of understanding. I think just really how we do this. And I'm glad that you asked this now, because this is perfect. So the big thing that's really interesting is that I feel what's really a part of this is when we go in front of a mirror, who do we see looking back at us? And so that morning of March the 6th of 2011, I went in front of the mirror. And I remember it is such a weird day for me, because before I knew that my father had died, it was the most gorgeous morning I've ever had in my life. It was almost like you could cut the room in our home with a knife. It was pure angelic vibrations. I cannot explain it aside from just, I felt like heaven had opened into our home. I don't know how to, like, there's no words for that. And I had the most beautiful morning. We thought that my father was sleeping, so we left him alone. So it gave my mother and I this beautiful morning that was gorgeous. And what's really weird about that morning is it went from the most beautiful angelic morning to the most horrific dark night of the soul, like that. And it went from 0 to 100 literally in a moment. So while the police were at our home, and they sent emergency services, like everyone comes to a suicide to support each other and what's going on, including grief counselors, and a lot of people come. So it turned into a very busy, chaotic moment. And I had to excuse myself. And I don't know how to explain this. I just kept wanting to pull out my hair from my head. I wanted to make sure I was in reality. And it was like I was living a nightmare, right? So I went in front of the mirror just to grab composure with myself. And I prayed to God. And what's wild is it's like my pupils opened up and showed me the inside of me was all that mattered in the mirror. And I think that, when I look at this 10 years later, I know this now, what that was. I didn't know then, but I know now, and that's what I can share now, is 10 years of this codex and lexicon and if you know Louise Hay's work, she worked in front of the mirror. It was her primary major tool that she showed people. And I understand why, because we have to recognize what's inside of us creates outside of us. And that is, if you don't start there, you cannot create your highest expression of your pure essence on earth. And it starts in front of the mirror, because you have to be well with the inside and the outside and be conscious of who's looking at you. And it's omnipresence. You are a part of omnipresence. And it starts with your soul and sovereignty, and it extends out to be love with other loving beings. And it's a complicated thing to sort of recalibrate yourself at times to go through that awareness. But when you start creating energetically with your frequency of pure essence, you can build heaven, a heaven of your love on earth. And we are very powerful beings and creative source energy. And what's really cool is it takes time to create that. But what you create from the inside does make the experience on the outside. And that's the metaphysical part that we know. So we're starting to get a really good handle on this on earth, and it's not going to stop. We're going to start seeing accelerations like crazy with this stuff, because we are remembering our power, our pure essence. And when we work together with it, we create co-creative world that we share. And that shifting is, this has been happening for a long time on earth, but we're with some very powerful old souls on planet earth right now. And I guarantee you most of the people that are watching this are those souls. So that's the reality of what I know. And I know you know this too. So yeah.
Yeah, as you're speaking, I was thinking of Dolores Cannon's work and how she would talk about the two earths, and how a lot of people took that to mean there would literally be two, the earth would split in two or whatever, two a new earth and an old earth. And yet it's all layered, it's all dimensional reality. And as we know, each person creates their experience. So it does feel like there's this whole world going on of kind of all the old 3D stuff, the fighting and anger and blaming and finger pointing and polarization. And then there's this opportunity, and it doesn't matter where you are in the spectrum of 3D, 5D, above, whatever, but there's this opportunity to pull yourself up or out of that polarization and step into a new version of living consciously. And every time I hear you speak or hear your music or read something you've written, I feel like that's your calling to people. You're reminding people you get to choose where you are and come up, and you talk about coming up to the higher self and sacred intelligence and, being divinely aligned, which which is so powerful, and that you found a way to do that vibrationally with music, um, is I feel like so much what this world needs right now. Sometimes we can't intellectualize our way
Mhm.
there, you know. So I wanted to talk to you about your guidance team, the Diamond Light Council. Um, do you feel like it's their interaction informing you with the music and the vibration, or how do you work with them? That'd be a better place
Yeah,
to
so
start.
it's really interesting. So I'll share with you, first of all, everyone has to find their own way. So this has been my experience, and I really want to promote really anyone listening to this to find your own way. And it isn't going to be like mine. It isn't going to be like Washela's, or it's not going to be like anyone else's. It has to be yours, which is authentically your soul signature. So that means, my version might be different. So I just wanted to quantify that first. And I know a lot of people wake up differently. So, and that term is used, quite frankly, and I'm just going to say this. I've met many people that are full of, mm, and the reality is that I really feel right now we're in the times of truth, instant karma, instant pure essence. And that means that, for me, I just want to say I'm not a guru. I'm not interested in being anyone's guru. I'm interested in promoting someone being their own guru. And so I just want to say that first before I open up this container of how this looked for me. So I really felt guided to sort of ultimately go to what I would call as a pyramid on the other side. I had it there in my mind's eye, and I didn't really understand what it was or how to position myself, but I decided to go into it and create and open up what I felt was sort of my natural way. And it was almost like an inauguration in many ways to my highest self, or an indoctrination to remember, really, quite frankly, my ability and my gifts, to unpack them. And I went into this pyramid and I started having experiences that were very beautiful in meditation, where I was really, quite frankly, visited by first God, and then by a multitude of many people that had been on the other side already, and or who had transitioned in a really recent sort of timeline. So for instance, I will say Sylvia Brown's a part of that for me. I will say, Dolores Cannon transitioned, Dr. Masaru Emoto transitioned, Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, and I have been guided through all of these soul signatures that have come to me. And we are very powerful to connect with souls that have been here. And many of them are way showers for us to remember our gifts. So, and it started, I will say, it started with my father after he transitioned. So we all have soul vibrational frequencies, and we must understand that it starts with the heart. The heart is a very powerful vibrational intelligence and sacred tool. It builds our body literally. And more, like the Heart Math Institute is doing studies around this, you're going to start to see how powerful the heart is. So heaven is really open through pure divine love from your heart. And that soul signature that you have vibrates very specifically and is capable of touching and tapping into other souls in a beautiful, loving way. So that's been my experience of sort of going through the veil. And you have to sort of take your time and process and create your own codex and lexicon, soul signature from yourself. And how you navigate that is up to you. And, these messages that come are light. They always remind me they're lighter than a feather and even lighter than that. And this is the thing that happens, is when you start following your heart shows you the wisdom of the ages, and that's where we're at. So it's a complicated, the Diamond Light Council is all about the DNA, I think, upgrading into the 12-stranded DNA is what I would say. And it's the diamond light from source that you have to flood the DNA with. And that's what I did. And more and more and more, I just expanded divine love. And the way is to really become love, expanding love is the master code. And when you do that, when you expand love that's within your heart with the outside world and find those that you can co-create love with, heaven starts to bloom on earth. And this is so simple. I think that human beings tend to want such solid answers, but it's really not a solid experience. Love is a fluid, beautiful, omnipresent vibration that we know, and creating with it is really how we do bloom heaven on earth. And it's with each other, holding hands in pure peace. So that peace within creates the peace without. The love within creates the love without. The joy within creates the joy without. And we have to just trust, no matter what might come that's annoying or bad or quite frankly, sometimes negative, we just have to stop, start over again in the morning, and start again every day. And when we start doing this, heaven starts to show up around us. And I can safely say, I mean, I've met people all around the world doing what I do, expanding my heart's love through music. And it's a great reminder of how you do it, because music is a vibration and a frequency, and everybody can create whatever frequencies in their heart with others. And that's the best part. So it's a complicated, discussion, in a whole container, but it's actually really easy. And it's just be the love that's within you and bring it to life on the outside of you with others.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And that's a choice in every moment. I myself have had a huge heart awakening experience a few years back. And, that showed me how to be in that space and how to be open. And yet it's still a day by day,
Yeah.
moment by moment process. And so, it's also learning not to be in judgment, self-judgment or judgment of other when we find ourselves not in that heart space, but a
Yes.
reminder
Yeah,
we can always
exactly.
get back.
And it's really, and I have to say too, like in that aspect of who we are, it can be challenging, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And what you just do is you go to sleep at night, and you really just enter into the new day with a fresh start every day, regardless of whatever's happened, and you let it go more and more. Because I think what happens oftentimes is we get scared. And I used to live in immense fear and anxiety. But what happened is, you have to turn up your frequency to pure whole love. And the more you do it, it's like a muscle, it just gets bigger and stronger. And that really is your highest self. When you are your pure essence of love, it gets easier and easier to just be in that frequency. And at first it's a bit dense, when you first start. And if anybody's been doing this for a while, you kind of know how to navigate challenge, and you just sort of move on. So I love that you said that.
Yeah, and also that's making me think about how such a big part of it, and this is part of the a conversation about ascension, is the willingness to really face what we're most afraid of and be our authentic selves. And like what coming out of the closet in whatever way that is for each individual, opens, it allows us to open, it allows the heart to open. Have you found that in your life, the more authentic you are about your truth, the
Mhm.
more that you're in touch with your higher self, the divine?
100%. And I think, we have been so programmed, and this is the thing, like we have to really understand that we have been programmed by what everyone else wanted us to be. Everyone, and that's a part of the experience, but that's not where we end. That's where we get to then add our highest self to that. And then sort of, I would say almost auto-correct where we've gone astray from our highest self. And what I know to be true about that is, it gets a lot easier the more you do it. I do feel called, like I just feel this message coming through. An ascension cycle for me is 9 years, and I just feel like the 9 wants to come through here. So you have to keep in mind that, so I've lived one ascension cycle and a little bit, really, in in consciousness. So, they even say to master anything, it takes 10 years. It's kind of interesting because when you start creating something for almost a decade, you start to actually see the power that you have, is what happens. So a doctor really isn't a doctor until after 9 years of schooling, right? And then they can be a doctor. But these are things that are, we need to be patient to get through a 9-year ascension cycle of creating our heart on earth. So, that takes time. And then what's really beautiful is then you sort of have a double ascension cycle, which is another 9 years. And it just gets better as we do this. So I just feel, it's an important part to just exercise meditative practice so that you can just be in the flow, the divine flow of the way that naturally you will be given the gifts and the blessings of life. And it really comes from just being patient, but trusting every day to just make the promise to your heart that you will expand love with it, no matter what it asks of you. And that's your pure essence. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's a process. I do get that. And, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about my own process. And I've been on a spiritual path for about, well, nearly 30 years
Yeah.
consciously. And what I found is in the beginning, I felt like I had it all figured out. I felt like I knew, everything that was going on, oh, I'm awake, I'm woke, people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, like it's kind of like maybe it's every 9 years. I haven't kept track of it that way, but I feel like a newborn baby. I was literally laying in bed this morning, and I'm 49. I'll be 50 this year. Thinking 50 really, like, our human lives are just too short. 50 is like adolescence, like I'm just beginning to figure myself out, just beginning, but I've been working on myself for 30 years. And I feel like I need another 50 years just to feel like a young adult.
Yeah. It's interesting that, like, even in that, and the I know that space and time is shifting right now. So I actually, like, perhaps you'll get that too, like, to me, we're living in a very, these times have been predicted for thousands of years, and we're in the thick of it right now. And it's why there's so much, crumbling of the old systems and changing literally all around us that's going on. I mean, we're in a global event that hasn't happened for a long time this way. And we're in flow of it. But I know what you're talking about is really just space and time is going to start shifting more and than we've ever witnessed it. So perhaps that's a part of it. You might just actually get that.
And I'm really not concerned about how long I have. It's more of the realization that the more I learn, the more I grow, and the more I understand, the less I feel like I actually have it figured out.
Yeah, well said. So
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of a newly awakened human, um, you know, often feels, I don't know, it's almost like the guru. And I've witnessed this a lot, these newly awakened beings, and they're full of light and beauty and love. So no judgment. But it's like with spiritual maturity comes the realization like, oh, there's so much going on.
I
I
know.
don't even
And we're talking about, like, the reality is we're talking about infinity. I mean, how do you cannot even conceptualize all that it, like, I mean, just we're surrounded by literally infinity. I mean, that
Yeah,
alone blows my mind. So
yeah.
I love you saying that, in just looking at, like, the joy of what that really is and unpacking it as best we can in the moment.
Right. And I also feel like this time, and you've mentioned it several times, like this is such a special and unique time, and there is opportunity now, possibly more than ever, certainly more than ever in our lives, to open up to something new, to something beyond. And I'm really noticing myself in this process. And I have a devout spiritual practice, but I've gone beyond where I've ever gone before, which is what has me awakening to how little I'm really aware of in this human body because it doesn't fit. Like the consciousness that's available, we just can't fit it in these human bodies and life experience as human. And when we talked before, I was saying how I feel like there's a new thinker in my head. It's thinking way beyond, my personal thoughts, but, or at least what my personal thoughts used to be. And I
Mhm.
feel like that is kind of like the opening of the portal into the higher self. Will you share your thoughts on what does it mean? What is it to be in touch with your higher self? Or what is it for you?
Yeah, so I mean, this is the thing for structure, and I mean, this is a complicated discussion for some people that have, I would say, limiting beliefs on what I would say is God or source. And the thing for me, I can speak for me. My experience has been that, um, you know, it really comes down to actually this one relationship that you have with God or with source or with consciousness, or that without a name, whatever it is, presence is a good word I like for it. I also like the beloved. That's a word I like now to use, because the reality is this oneness that is in that is in all of us. And so I think, the structure of that is really a big part of where I think just my highest self is. And I always feel, and I will say this, openly, I come from the right hand side of God. And I mean, I'm not afraid to say that anymore now. I could have never said that before. But the truth is, that's what I know. And that's what I feel in my heart. And I came to serve God. And that's the only reason why I came to this planet. And it's really, I'm not from here. I came to help. And, that goes into Dolores Cannon's work. I think that if you haven't read her work, I think you may want to. I think it's a great opportunity to expand your consciousness with something that's fantastic. And she's one of my first guides, I would say, to remember, I think ultimately, some of those frequencies. So I love that you brought this up, because you have to open up the bloom of you. And that means you have to explore what's going on inside and remember the divine that you are, looking literally in presence at yourself and this beautiful world. And I know for me, like I woke up really in healing. And when I was really communicating with God in a way that was so powerful was in nature and hugging trees and consciously communicating with the birds, literally the water, literally the trees. And I mean, that is heaven. When nature doesn't judge us, it doesn't need anything from us, and it reminds us that we're nature. So for me, that is the first starting, I would say the first cornerstone of, I think, tapping into our inner, I think, heaven. And nature exists. It doesn't need to go to Walmart. It doesn't need to go to a store. It just exists. A bird knows how to build a nest. And it reminds us that we're really not that different. We don't really need a lot of things that we have. We have everything in us. We just have to remember that that's the first part of tapping in. And then what happens is it just starts to expand, and you will be shown in divine alignment what's next for you. And it is a process. So for me, it's taken me 10 years. You've been doing this for 30. That's a long time compared to my little awoken self. But I've really I've understood that I know that I'm here to help, basically care and have compassion, and at times a great deal of helping hand vibrationally with other hearts. It's why I came. And I think we all know that inside of us, deep inside, that we care about each other. And we've been hurt. So many people, I was hurt by the world for a long time. And I took it personally for a while. That's okay. And you when you're on the ground, God will come and pick you up out of the muck and help you wash yourself off and help you lift up and ascend, to remember that it's going to be okay and that you have forever. And this is the thing, when you have forever, you don't really worry about today. And that's where we're at, I think, in 2021 on Earth, is we're going to remember that we have forever.
Mm.
And I think when you realize that you're more than just your life, you are eternal, you stop worrying about the silly things, and you start understanding that you can do a lot with the power that's within you, and you are more powerful than thousands of suns. And the other part of it is that you're also a lineage to every single heart that's beat so that yours could. And it's a pretty important thing to remember that every heart allowed your heart to come to life in you. And when you start looking at the bloodline of that, you start recognizing how miraculous all of those lives were that had to be so you could. So don't miss the opportunity to be here with the love that's within you, that were all those hearts that loved. And that's really, these are big messages, but that's the truth. And I think we're living in a time where we can trust life with the truth now. And, for instance, God is defined as the truth, the light, and the way. That's within you, and that dwells in you. And when you start amplifying that, because I like that word amplifying, I always see us as a microphone. We're one big microphone. And I love, as a singer, when I use a microphone, my voice is so much more powerful, but it's powerful because it comes from my heart, and I just have an amplifier all around me. And I think that if we can just think of ourselves as a microphone amplifying our heart, this vibration goes out to the world. But what's the best part about it is it will find the hearts that understand it and notice your heart. And in this flow starts to happen between hearts that feel each other. And that feels great, like a nectar of heaven. And that's what I've felt over and over as a singer, doing what I do. But that's just my way. And your heart has its way. And there's so many things in that excite me, because when you start living that way, then we're kind of in heaven
Mm.
right here on earth, so it's exciting.
Oh, wow. So much there are about 50 things you just said that I want to get into more. I love
Yeah.
everything you just shared. The truth, the light, and the way. And when you think about that, like, this truly is the time we're being asked to stand in our truth. What are you about? And that's the amplification when you do that of the light, that helps you, not only you find your way, but all the other people find their way when you're representing standing in your truth. And I feel like that's the beacon of light that we have the opportunity to be in every moment. And when we can find our way of doing that, our unique expression, our unique amplification, we're in service just by being.
Yeah. And the thing that I just, something that's coming to my heart, which I always trust my heart when it wants to say something. But right now, my heart just says, first of all, I want to thank you. Thank everybody for who's joining in on a live or a replay, wherever that may be at any given time. Thank you. And I want to just my heart saying to point to this picture behind me. And I was thinking, it's so interesting because I haven't really recorded here very often, but this picture was in India. And it was such a magical moment. It was at an ashram I was invited to sing for Daddy Janki of the Brahma Kumari. And it's so wild because it was through all of the things that had to happen following my heart that I got there to get here. And I think that's what happens is we start having this synaptic heart connections. And this was a moment with these children in the back. This is this woman's car. This is who I was invited to go with, was Sister Jenna. And it was just this magical moment in India where this car showed up at this ashram with these people, and she was like, do you want to go for a ride? And I said, yes. And, we were in India on top of Mount Abu in the middle of a place I've never been to. And when you follow your heart, that's the kind of experience you can have. And if you don't, really, quite frankly, it's just, it's not wrong, it's not anything, but what you aren't having is a heart experience with something that you create. And I just want to acknowledge all of these people that were in that car, because they're looking at you, maybe not in person, but that they were all present. And that's that omnipresence that I think we're going to start experiencing more and more and more of, is that we can tap into that frequency with our subtle body and our sacred technologies that are from within us. And it's just exciting to sort of, I think, ultimately be in these times where we are actually using our sacred technology. And, we haven't really heard that word much, or that phrase much. We always hear of artificial intelligence. Well, that's great, but really the real jewel is the heart and the soul, and that's the truth.
Mm. This is something that I teach in my training course. I call them divine light technologies.
See?
And these are downloaded, they're not mine. I don't own them, but I received them through meditation, through my, training from the divine.
Yeah.
And I what I call it is activate people into them, but they're not, it's just basically reminding people that this is who you are and what you are. And the heart, the diamond light of the heart, is one of the sacred technologies that we all have. It's just that we sometimes need someone to remind us that that's part of who we are. Our sacred technology, this is our sacred tech. This is our divine light technology, the human body. And that's the embodiment piece. When we embody this structure, this form, this physicality that isn't, really part of our divinity, but it is, when we inhabit it, it becomes that's the embodiment. That's when we get to turn on our mystical power and purpose, which is the other part of the tagline of this show, to embody your mystical power and purpose. And so I love that you brought up sacred technology, because that's so important. It's not just about going out and meditating, it's about bringing the embodiment and ascending from the inside of this container out and sharing it through the physicality, so that we can have experiences like what you just shared. Tell me more about your insights on sacred technology, please.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to, I think, ultimately praise you for saying it out loud too, because the heart, like just what you just said I felt like I was just in heaven. So it's just, thank you, because I think that we have so much noise going on in this wild world. It's like a jungle out there right now. I mean, everybody's living this wild experience with, and I'm going to say the word I will say, COVID-19. And we need to recognize that we have everything in us that's meant to be in us. And when you were talking, I had this vision that I just wanted to share a moment for everybody to just take this moment. When you recognize that one sperm that just happened to be at that one particular time, at that one particular moment, in that one particular space, where that one particular egg was just there waiting for that one particular sperm, for that moment to come together, for that moment to become every single moment you've had. And there were so many choices that weren't made so that one could be made. And when that moment's made, you exist and your presence is here. And there's no mistake that you are here right now with that moment. So that could be, so this could be, and so that we could be together. And that's the soul connection that we all must understand, that we're here for a reason. And you matter. There's no mistake in this huge dance of divinity. And that's the sacred technology that you have in you. And that's a part of something so much greater than any of us can really fathom, actually, because it's miraculous. And you're just speaking to that from your heart. Your heart had to pump your entire body to life. And that's a pretty amazing thing when you really think about it. And I just love that technology is in us, that just happened. We didn't really need anything but just presence to have that moment. And there were no mistakes in it. And it was so much more than just your father and your mother. It was so much more. and that sacredness is really, I think, where we're at in honoring life. And it's exciting. And you're speaking to the, just, I think, the, that sacred heart and that technology that is in that frequency, because we're all vibrations. Einstein always talked about, really, we need to start thinking about energy and frequency. We're there. And when we do that, we're going to basically jump forward in our evolution. And that's beyond exciting to me, because when we do that, we actually kind of get it. And then what? And that's kind of where I'm just so excited about the then what. And it just feels great to say it.
It's happening now.
Yeah, now. Yeah.
As you were speaking, I was seeing not just the creation of one life, but that all life,
Yeah.
all physicality that exists, um, was from that divine conception, or first conception of divine masculine and divine feminine, and together creating divine child and coming into form as inspiration. And then all physicality, all physical life, or maybe this reality, and who knows how many others, were born from that moment
Mhm.
in existence. So that's powerful stuff.
Yes.
Um, Something I don't want to let go without jumping back in is when you said, "I'm not from here."
Mhm.
Um, I'd love to hear, more about that. Where are you from?
Well, you know what? The truth is, I know a lot of people have said past lives to me. I do feel like I've maybe been here maybe once or twice so far. That's where I'm at. And I would say, I feel like I was here essentially at an imprisonment camp at one point. And another time, I think I was a priest. So I've had those two memories. That said, I do feel that I come, and I'm going to say this again because I know that I came to serve God. I'm from God. And I don't know, perhaps I'll answer that from the other side at one particular moment. But I feel like that's really all I need to say. And I know that I come from God.
Hmm, beautiful. I love that. As we all do, at the highest level, right? Yeah, yeah, I can feel that. I can definitely feel that from you.
Mm.
Um, so, gosh, there's so many things that really spoke to my heart in this interaction with you. And I feel, so expanded just by getting to share this time with you. Um, I do want to get like hear a little bit about your healing work. And so we all know now that you're a musician, and and you're certainly healing with sound and frequency. You also do Louise Hay's work, which is heal your life. Will you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I've trusted my process to just show me what's meant to be. It's just how I live my life. So my healing work is really, ultimately, first and foremost, I am a sound conscious healer and musician. And I think ultimately, if I'm to listen to what other people say about my work, ultimately I am in many ways a tuner. I help people to tune into their frequency that might be a little out of tune. So that's what my music kind of does. Okay. So it retunes you to your pure essence. It helps you anyways. It's a tool. And in many ways, it's a sacred tool because it will frequency you back to remember your heart in a way that is meant for you with source or with God. So that's really what I do in terms of my music. And beyond that, Louise Hay was someone that, was a huge, she sold over 55 million copies of her book, You Can Heal Your Life. That's sort of her big thing. And she also was ultimately a creator of Hay House Publishing. And this was through the mastery of her work. And that started actually ironically because of AIDS and HIV is really where she got her first fame. She used to do what was called hayrides in the 80s when the epidemic was sort of first starting on Earth. And she supported gay men when nobody wanted to support them. So that is just something that she did. But what's sort of funny about this all these years later, my music was used for her 90th birthday. And this is a part of what I do now because I was invited to take this course to become a certified Heal Your Life teacher. And I just did that last year. So that's sort of new. So I'm running a couple of classes now for the first time. And that's so beautiful online because I have people from Africa and people from, these are all fans of my music, but now they're in my space sort of sharing healing from Louise Hay. And I know she's with me on the other side helping too. And this is sort of what's happening in my work is it's sort of going through the veil and it's helping, I think, ultimately people ascend. So, you know, it's a lot more than just one thing. I sort of work in all sort of different arenas in that way. And I would even say, you know, it's funny, John Burgos is on this show as well as Lauren Gailey as well. And these were people that hosted me when I first started doing this. And I still do them periodically as Ascension readings. And so that's another part of my work. And I had to come up with an Ascension circle. And, you know, I work with giving readings to people. And I've done that a lot at different moments in my time. But these are all tools and I think gifts that I have to serve, really, quite frankly, human beings remembering their soul and their heart. So that's sort of, you know, the container of me.
Beautiful. To serve human beings, remembering their soul and their heart. That is an incredible service. And I thank you for that. And you're sharing a wonderful gift with the viewers it's a song that you wrote called My Heart. Would you tell us about that song?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm really grateful you brought this up because I feel really, this is such an interesting thing about, I don't even know how to explain this. I'm going to try to do my best to really give a texture to this, to understand it. When I was 16 or 17, I had a vision, and I've had visions all my life. I think most of us do. I just don't think we understand how to navigate them because we sort of weren't shown by our, you know, the teachers that were in our life at that time, but we're kind of getting it as we kind of expand. So I had this vision when I was 16 that I would write a quantum heart love song. So this is really kind of a funny thing because I was so confused about that message. Like I didn't get it at 16. So fast forwarding to after my dad died, I had this vision that it's time to write a quantum heart love song. And I was like, okay. So I sat down at the piano. I always tap into God and just let it flow through. This song came through like that. And it's so interesting that it was chosen to honor Louise Hay's life. And it's been used, I've sang this at the United Nations. I've sang this in Europe. I've sang this pretty much everywhere I've ever been. And it is my famous song, really. And I wanted to give it for free because what it's about, and I remember having this moment with Louise Hay, like where I actually saw what your heart's capable of is at that moment with Louise Hay being honored. She said nothing at that event. She just took in all the love in the room. But this song asks you to put your hand on your own heart and love yourself and breathe in that love for yourself, from yourself to yourself. And it's really interesting I remember looking at the audience that day with 2,000 people putting their own hand on their own heart, loving themselves, but loving Louise. And that's that namaste flow that happened. And I remember just sort of being in awe that my heart was capable of that to somebody that was really famous, that did a lot of things to help a lot of people. And this is the gift that you'll have that I'm happy to give you for free. And my hope is that you take some time to really understand the nuance of your own heart and the importance of putting something on the outside, but remembering the inside at one time with the beloved. And something happens when you do that. And we don't spend a lot of time loving ourselves, and we're oftentimes really mean to ourselves, which is what Louise sort of, her work was all about. I've been mean to myself in my life. You know, I have had a critical voice of myself. But when you actually rise above that, there's something that happens, and you tap into this field that is so much more than that. And I don't know how to explain this, but things shift. So that's the gift I chose to give today. Yeah.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing about that. I feel so much more connected to it now. And so that is the challenge for everyone watching, to receive the gift from Paul of the song My Heart, and then really tap into your own heart and love yourself and breathe and feel that. Incredible.
Yeah, it's
Thank
beautiful.
you.
And just one last thing is that, you know, the world's healed when we're healed on the inside. And, you know, this is really, it's not a small mission. So when we are healed truly, we are then able to help someone else heal. And that's been going on a lot for the last, I think, 50 and 60 years on the planet. And we're really starting to see the quantum aspects start to leap forward because there's enough of us now. So, yeah.
Yeah. And when we feel good, we want to share it, and we want everyone else to feel good.
Yeah,
Um,
beautiful.
yeah. Thank you so much, Paul. This was just beautiful. Loved this conversation and everything that you shared. Thank you for your generosity and your love.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's joined in as well. And God bless.
Yeah.
Mwah.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And just know that wherever you are, you're not alone. We're all on this journey together, ascending and expanding our hearts together. So thank you for watching. Namaste.
Namaste. Mm.